The Pittsburgh Penguins and the Columbus Blue Jackets. This is game two of the three series meetings between the Blue Jackets and the Pittsburgh Penguins. My name is Thomas McGregor. You may know me from Dolphins postgame, but to most of you, you know me as the host of On the Ice and Behind the Benches. Let's talk Blue Jackets, let's talk Penguins, and see if the Penguins bounce back against the Blue Jackets in game two of the three-game series meeting. Let's see what happened. Welcome to Penguins hockey on the ice and behind the benches, and of course, sports for beginners.
You're locked in to Penguins hockey on the Sports for Beginners podcast. Sidney Crosby and the Penguins play here on the Sports for Beginners podcast. Hey, Showcase scores! The bingo game is ready to roll. Welcome to Penguins postgame. I'm PPG for PGH, and you'd have to be here to believe it. Here is your host, Scott McGregor.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Sports for Beginners' studio. Welcome into On the Ice and Behind the Benches, this podcast studio. I am your host of this Penguins program for Penguins postgame, stepping in for the original host of the program, Scott McGregor. And might I say, it was a game to believe and a game to also say, well, on to the next one. The Pittsburgh Penguins and the Columbus Blue Jackets met again for a game that some would say the Blue Jackets already saw in the first of their two meetings. This is actually meeting number one against the Blue Jackets. I was wrong there in my introduction. I thought this was game number two. That is my bad. But we'll get along to it as we normally can. First things to bring up is the head coaches and, of course, the starting netminders for the teams. But before we get to that, let's talk about what time the game was starting at. Now, as you know, the Penguins and the Blue Jackets are on a back-to-back, which gets started to finish off tonight, Saturday, the time of our recording, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, which will likely be at 6 p.m. Central Time, a 4 p.m. Pacific Time, and at 12 midnight in the UK time puck drop. But before we get down to when the game really started and break down the games, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you into the post game show, and I'd also like to take this opportunity to remind you of the venue we're going to be covering and the location. So the venue was Nationwide Arena, and the head coaches are none other than Mike Sullivan for your Pittsburgh Penguins. A little bit more on him in just a little bit. And Dean Evanson for the Blue Jackets. Dean Evanson for the Blue Jackets. Now, since the Blue Jackets are the home team of the first game, of course, I thought this was the second meeting, but this is technically the first meeting of the season between the Blue Jackets and the Penguins. I must be referring to the game where they got shut down 7-1. That's another game. And speaking of the other game, if you haven't already checked out the 7-1 final for the Penguins and the opponent of their choice that had that 7-1 beatdown. I believe that was the final score, 7-1. Please go check it out if you haven't already. Link will be provided in both descriptions of both episodes on the ice and behind the benches, and of course, Sports for Beginners, the podcast. We also have a pre-show that is covering select Penguins hockey games this season, but my goal is to get that one out to Penguins fans next season. Throughout most of the games, we will see what happens next season. But for now, it's select post-game shows. Excuse me, pre-shows. It's select pre-shows for Penguins hockey games. And if you haven't checked out the latest pre-shows, then I suggest you go check them out. Links will be provided in the description of the episode below as well for those. All right. So we talked about the coaches. We're going to talk about the coaches is netminders, or as I call them, the goaltenders of the contest. Now, this one had quite of an interesting matchup for the Blue Jackets to face, considering the fact that while under Kyle Dubas, the GM of the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Pittsburgh Penguins would go back and call up Tristan Jarry, but also leave Alex Nedeljkovic to keep a backup site. Now, many of us could have saw this coming. Many of us could have said, "Why don't you just put Nedeljkovic in and make Jarry the backup? You just called him up." Others would say, "Okay, let's see if Jarry's improved from what we've seen early in this season. Will he get off to a better start than what he had at the very beginning of the season?" Now, we aren't at the midway mark yet of the season, but we are getting there. All right, we are getting there. And we'll talk about that surely on the other end of the show as we are making our way through. But Tristan Jarry, his first game back, would go up against Elvis Merzwinkins. Elvis, I apologize in advance for not getting your name, his last name right in the pronunciation. That was he wears number 90, and he was backed up by number 40, D Tarsova. D Tarso D Tarsova. D Tarsova. The Columbus Blue Jackets. So your matchup was Elvis Merzwinkins and Tristan Jarry. Elvis Merzwinkins versus Tristan Jarry at Nationwide Arena. How would this game go down? Well, we're going to talk about how that game would go down in just a few minutes, but let's take a brief timeout and hear words from our station and maybe words from Spotify as we get our podcast up and running. And for those tuning in on YouTube, welcome to the show. And we're looking forward to doing many more of these in the nearby future, but we'll see where the show takes us. Before we take that break, I do want to issue a note that we will have PWHL recap for those of you listening here on the Ice and Behind the Benches. We will have PWHL recap return covering the same amount of games it did last season, select hockey games, and yes, they will be select. It won't be an actual team. Will we talk about the PWHL? Stick around for future episodes of On the Ice and Behind the Benches coming up starting either next Tuesday or the Tuesday after, and I will have that information for you. Now, we're going to take the break and come back with breaking down the game. between the Penguins and the Blue Jackets. You're listening to Penguins hockey. If you're listening on audio slash watching on YouTube, you're watching Penguins hockey on Sports for Beginners and streaming every Penguins hockey Wednesday off day on the ice and behind the benches. We will be right back.
Looking for conversations on the world of broadcasting, sports media, and from time to time, my favorite sports teams? Listen to Broadcast Map with me, Ali Musa. To learn more about the show and to view the upcoming schedule, like the Broadcast Map Facebook page. Search Broadcast Map.
CNT Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down, nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for The Melting Pot every Saturday on CNT Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for The Melting Pot on CNT Radio.
Welcome back into Penguins postgame. Of course, it's always great to hear words from our friends over at Broadcast Map. It's always great to hear words from our friends over at Sienna T Radio. And it is always great to hear words from other people who are coming in to help make contributions to the show, whether it's on the ice and behind the benches, this show in particular, or other shows, Sports for Beginners and On the Ice and Behind the Benches, always put together. I am your host of this program, Thomas McGregor. The original host is out of business for now until after the back-to-back, which reminds me, I'd like to keep it tuned because maybe tonight, maybe next, maybe later, maybe Sunday, ahead of Bills and Chiefs, you'll be probably getting the recap for the Sharks and the Penguins. Who knows? All I can tell you is that I will be the host for the Sharks and the Penguins after the Sharks and the Penguins goes final. Now, some of you might be asking if you see on my host's hat, but you're a Maple Leafs fan. Why are you doing back-to-back hockey games for the Pittsburgh Penguins? Well, it's something the host of Sports for Beginners and I agreed on doing should one of us not be able to do the show. So, does that mean you're not going to get Edmonton Oilers and the Maple Leafs on Maple Leaf Post recap? No. But it does mean that you'll still get it. You just won't get it the day after the game. Pertaining to time constraints. We could talk a lot more about that a little later on. But now that we're back in action, let's talk about the game. Okay? Let's talk about the game. And I am going to do some looks at the NHL website to help us out here. And we're going to talk about the game. Now, we're not going to do any plays of the game or anything like that on this show. As much as we want to, we're not going to do that for this one. But what we are going to do is we're going to do the penalty killers and the goal scorers, as well as get you a little bit of knowledge before we get into our game stats of what the periods looked like on the shots on goal. With that being said, let's start with the scoring. So around 2 minutes and 20 seconds in, we have the former Pittsburgh Penguin, Zach Aston Reese, or Zachary Aston Reese, Zach Aston Reese. I apologize if I'm not getting your name right, but we will work with it. Anyways, it's 1-0 Columbus, 2 minutes and 20 seconds in. Now, you could call this a goal, you could call it a tip in, you could call it whatever you want. The the remain the fact of the matter is that it was a goal and it remains a goal for the duration of the hockey game. But it didn't stop there. As we move along in the game, you'll notice that some of these goals do occur after penalties have been called. And one of them that occurred in the second period before Pittsburgh finally got the answer was Zach Werenski, who got a goal to make it 2-0 Blue Jackets. Uh-oh, here we go again, Pittsburgh Penguins fans, the almost all too familiar story. I digress. I don't want to get you I don't want to get your hopes up. Okay? I don't want to get your hopes up and say anything bad, so we're just going to say that it's 2-0 Blue Jackets, okay? You know it's the first meeting of 3 between the two teams. You know it's the first meeting. So let's not jump the gun. Let's not jump the gun. Let's not jump the gun, all right? All right? Let's not jump the gun. We will be talking about this game as unbiased as we possibly can be. Okay? So, Zach Werenski, goal number 2 of the game for the Blue Jackets, 8 minutes and 39 seconds. He gets an assist by YC and AF, their 5th and 7th assist of the season. And this would also be a power play for them on the CBG. So it would be a CBG power play goal for CBG, which is also the short form for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Anthony would know his team is down 2-0. So Pittsburgh Penguins fans, what does he do? He slaps. No, excuse me. He gets a tip-in shot off the stick of Sidney Crosby, the captain of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and that would be Crosby's 12th assist of the season. Anthony's 6th goal of the season, which will be followed after 4 goals of the season from Zach Werenski and Zachary Ast, Aston Reese, or Zach Aston Reese, which would also have his 4th goal in the season. Now, both of those goal scorers had 3 goals coming into this game. Now they have 4. So good job to those guys. Let's move along. Anthony's goal comes at a time of 11 minutes and 51 seconds. We're going to get into the penalty takers in just a few minutes' time. But before we get there, let's keep you all underway with how the other periods went. Okay? Okay. So Michael Bunting, we talked about PPGs. He gets a PPG for PGH, which also stands for Pittsburgh. So the Pittsburgh Penguins power play seems to be clicking. But again, that is something to be talked about on an episode of On the Ice and Behind the Benches, and maybe on Sports for Beginners. We'll talk about the power play another time. How they're doing. Are they doing well? Are they doing bad? We'll talk about that on another edition of Sports for Beginners or On the Ice and Behind the Benches. So the Penguins have tied it. It's 2-2. Thanks to Michael Bunting. Anthony has had 1 assist on the season. He now has 2, but so has the doctor in Drew O'Connor. Drew O'Connor had 1 assist in this season and this campaign for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now he has 2. While Michael Bunting has 3 goals on the season, thanks to a wrist shot at 12 minutes and 6 seconds. The game is tied. The game is tied. The game is tied for it. Matthew Oliver would not let Pittsburgh get away though with this, and he got his 4th goal on the season that he already has. This is his 5th goal of the season. It comes against the It came against the Penguins at 16 minutes and 27 seconds. With a snapshot, it's now 3-2 Blue Jackets over the Pittsburgh Penguins. Oh no. Oh no. I think things are shaping up in the Blue Jackets way. Maybe that's the case, maybe not the case. And for those of you who are joining us on YouTube or wherever you may be catching this, welcome to the show. It is great of you to join us. I'll just catch you up to speed when I get a chance to. We're just going over the period summary, which is talking about the first, second, and of course the regulation period, which is the third period. Matthew Oliver being the only other goal scored in the second period, and it is 3-2 Blue Jackets after 40 against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So some may say that, well, Anthony got the goal to keep the Blue Jackets to a 1-goal lead. Some would say that the Pittsburgh Penguins, after 20 minutes, were losing by 2 goals, 2-1. But if you look at it, you erase that 2, you get a work of saying, well, okay, they've got the 1 goal, now they just need 2 to tie it. So who better to do that than Michael Bunting? Michael Bunting ties the game up. Matthew Oliver breaks the ice again. And then you get guys like Demetria V kicking us off in the third period with a minute 56. And all of a sudden, it is now Blue Jackets 4, Penguins 2. So now it feels a little bit more of a 2-goal hockey game, like it did early in the game when the Blue Jackets scored the first 2 goals of the game. Right? Now it feels like it's the Blue Jackets and the Pittsburgh Penguins traded goals back to back. But Anthony, of course, tied it. Well, not tied, but you get what I mean. He broke the ice and tried to score goals so that the Blue Jackets would not get out to a rather 4-0 lead. So by the time Demetria and Matthew scored, it was already 2 goals to a side. 2 goals Blue Jackets, 2 goals Pittsburgh Penguins, coming off of Michael Bunting and Anthony B. Anthony B and Michael Bunting for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So I'm sure we're all thinking when it's 4-2 Blue Jackets, hey, we did it once, can we do it again? Let's try and tie this up. And I'm sure that's what a lot of us Penguins fans were thinking. Now, I'm not a Penguins fan, but that's a topic for another time. Anyways, Demon Seaver Damon Silverson. Damon Silverson got a 5-2 Columbus Blue Jackets lead, and it only took him. Remember how I said Demetria V only got a minute 56? Only took him a minute 56. Well, just minutes after, at 9:49, we had a goal that made it 5-2 Blue Jackets over the Pittsburgh Penguins. 5-2 Blue Jackets over the Pittsburgh Penguins. So one's got to wonder, how did that happen? How did that happen? Like, how did that even get there? How did we get there? Well, remember how I said we were tied at 2-2? Matthew broke the ice in the second period. The Blue Jackets, of course, go up by 3 and are only up a goal going into regulation here, which is, of course, the period we're talking about now. Monahan, he has 6 assists on the season. He now has 7 assists on the season. And so does DV, who has his first assist of the season, coming against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Congratulations to him on getting his first assist, and it's against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, obviously, at this point, we know that if we're Pittsburgh Penguin fans and we know we're going to lose this game, we think we still have a shot, but we don't have a shot if it comes down to Cole Slinger, and it did. He gets it in the back of the net of an empty net goal, and the Columbus Blue Jackets go up 6-2, 15 minutes and 32 seconds into the regulation period, with Pomerov and Danforth on the assist, each getting their 4th and 5th assist of the season, alongside Monahan, who got his 7th assist of the season, DV, who got his 1st. Monahan also had his 6th assist of the season in this game, with Marchenko getting number 10. And your assists for Michael Bunting's goal were Drew O'Connor and Anthony. If I hadn't mentioned them to you already, there you go. All right. Looks like we're going to get a break in the action in 15 minutes, but we've got some other things to get through. And if we don't get through all of the penalties, we will finish off the penalties to get into our game stats, which is coming up in just about minutes from now. Okay, so it all starts with Drew O'Connor. He gets a hooking call against Damien. Excuse me, the break is coming up in 9 minutes. Okay, so let's see. We've got Drew O'Connor with a hooking minor at 8:32, 8 minutes, 32 seconds. We got Igor, or YC, a 2-minute call, I believe, for interference at 16:07, 16 minutes and 7 seconds. 19 minutes and 33 seconds, we've got Evgeni Malkin getting a slashing call on his former teammate, Zach Aston Reese. 2 minutes for him in the box, a slashing call. 2 minutes for him, slashing call. Jake C does get a holding call. I know I hate that call, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it, because we have in 9 minutes, or rather 8 minutes from now, a break coming in. But seeing Kerr High gets a high sticking call, we're in the second period now. And that's at 10:18. That's at 10:18 after a 4 minutes and 59-second penalty from Jake C. So seeing Curry High get a high, so Sean K, I'm gonna say Sean K. Sean K gets a high sticking call against Noel Achari. Time of that penalty, 10:18, 10 minutes and 18 seconds. Jack St. Ivany gets a holding call against Sean K. And this one is 13 minutes and 5 seconds into the penalty. We might not have time for the third period, so we're going to come back with Penguins post game to give you the third period, and then the game stats are coming up as well as the stars of the game. And then you know what's also coming up. We've got the note of the play of the game, which I will tell you what my play of the game was. And we've got our shake of the game also still to come with, of course, the preview of the next matchups. Now, because both teams are on a back-to-back, we will not be covering tonight's matchup for both teams when we look at the next games. We will, however, be covering the games that will be on after both teams are on a back-to-back and finish it up tonight. But more of that when we come back from Pittsburgh Penguins hockey. It does appear we have at least about 5 minutes to go before that break. So let's try and finish off the third period. So Noel Achari gets a holding call. I hate that call, but like I said, I'm not going to touch on it. 256, 256, 2 minutes 56 seconds, time of the call. 10 minutes 28 seconds, we got Marcus Pettersson, a tripping call. Dante Farbro follows 13 minutes and 30 seconds later at 13:30 with a cross-checking call to a guy that already scored the game. All right. So I don't know if we do have enough time to get into we don't have enough time to get into the game stats right now. So we're going to take a break and we're going to come back and wrap up with the game stats. But that pretty much does it for our period by period summary. So still to come, we've got the action between your Pittsburgh Penguins and the Blue Jackets is stars of the game, the play of the game, and we've also got our shake of the game plus the next game's pieces coming up. I'm also going to try and see if we can find some post-game quotes from the game, and I'm going to read them to figure out what the coaches or the players had to say without you even hearing them. There will be links in the description of the episode for you to look at while you are watching this, and you can do that as much as you want, but please do stay focused with the show, and we will be right back with more Penguins hockey. You're listening to Penguins hockey on Sports for Beginners and streaming every Wednesday Penguins hockey off day on the ice and behind the benches. We'll be right back. Looking for a good hockey podcast that covers your favorite hockey teams and mine? Check out On the Ice and Behind the Benches, where we chat about our favorite hockey teams from puck drop to the last play of the action. To learn more, follow the On the Ice and Behind the Benches Facebook page. Search On the Ice and Behind the Benches. Welcome back to Penguins Postgame. I am your host, Thomas Verreger, and welcome back into Penguins Hockey on Sports for Beginners and On the Ice and Behind the Benches. Of course, if you've missed most of our content so far, we have just broken down the periods, so I'm now going to get into the game stats of the action. Of course, this game last night against the Blue Jackets. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, when I talked about the goalies, I talked about the periods, and I talked about the coaches, that I made a mistake when I thought about this being the second meeting. I thought this was the second meeting. This must have been the first meeting against the Blue Jackets. That is my bad. But you know what? That is perfectly fine. That is perfectly fine because in the end, it is Penguins hockey. And we are talking about the Blue Jackets, and we are talking about the Penguins. So we gone through the penalties, and if you didn't hear me talk about that, I encourage you to go back and check it out. And I hope it was well enough for you. Before we get down to even the best of the game stats, let's talk about, okay? Let's talk about the game from within it. Okay, let's talk about the game from within it. So after the first 20, the Penguins and the Blue Jackets had about an even a norm had about an even amount of goals, shots on goal, and they had at least 9 total shots to Columbus is 6. So Columbus, it feels like, was down, but not by much, maybe by 3 goals. 3 chances on net, let's call it. 3 chances on net. So Columbus's goaltender had quite the workout. 9 shots faced. One of those 9 was a goal. And of course, that came off of the stick of Anthony in a tip in. The other of which could have been saves. Regardless, Columbus picked up the pace in the second period with a 14 shot tally on goal to Pittsburgh's 10 total shots. Now, this is where things get really, really interesting, and you kind of wonder if you're a Blue Jackets fan, you're watching the Penguins get beat by your team. This is where you kind of wonder what's really going on with Pittsburgh. Well, Pittsburgh in the third period, the regulation time period, only managed to get 4 straight chances on the net, while Columbus got 19 total shots or 19 chances on net. 19 chances. Now, you may like that, you may not like it. I digress. I digress. I do know this, that if you didn't like it, odds are you're wondering what could have been better or what could have made the team better. Now, obviously, both teams want to win. They want to win this game, but you can't win every game, okay? You can't win every game. And it's 82 games. So, with those being said, our shots on goal total would be the Blue Jackets smashing, but not really smashing the Pittsburgh Penguins by a shots on goal total of 39-23. So the Blue Jackets 39, the Penguins 23. If the game was bent on shots on goal and it depended on how many goals you had or chances you had on goal, I'd say Columbus wins fair and square. But it's all about the goals. So which goals go into the back of the net and are not actually just shots on goal. And again, Columbus wins that battle 6-2. In the face-off circle, though, we have quite a even face-off draw as well. But let's get to the face-off draws in a little bit. Okay, let's talk about the power play. So Penguins had 5 chances on the penalty kill, and Columbus was only able to score on one of those 5 chances. That was Zach Rowinski's goal. And on the other side of the power play, which means it was 20% for the Blue Jackets, the power play of 25% was the Pittsburgh Penguins, who had made Columbus go on the penalty kill 4 straight times, but was only able to take 1 goal, just like the Blue Jackets was only able to take 1 goal on a PPG. So they would end up ending the night with a 1 for 4 power play. Same like Columbus, but there would be a 1 for 5 power play. So it would basically be like 5 chances on the penalty kill for the Pittsburgh Penguins. They managed to kill off at least, I want to say maybe 3 of those penalties because they couldn't kill off the first one. So you take the first power play away. That's, I don't know how many power plays later, but they make it to 5, and all they can muster is 1 power play goal. Now, okay, seems like a great opportunity. And we speaking of penalty kills. And we speak of penalty kills. So penalty kills, we talked about who's in the penalty box, doesn't matter. The minutes for the Penguins, they spent 10 minutes in the box. For the Jackets, they spent just about 8 minutes in the box. They hit the Jackets 18 times, but the Jackets hit them more than 18, and the final tally of the hits was 26 to 18. They blocked 25 of Pittsburgh's shots, and Pittsburgh blocked only 20 of the Blue Jackets shots. And we talk about giveaways and takeaways sometimes on game stats, and just because we have time, and I'm going to wrap up the game stats over here for the 3 stars to come up, and we still got our play of the game to go to as well. I'm just going to talk about the takeaways before I get into the giveaways. So, the Penguins took the puck away from the Jackets 5 times. The Jackets, however, took the puck away 3 times. And if you look at it from a giveaway standpoint, now that we got to the giveaways, the Penguins seem to give up the puck a little less than what the Blue Jackets did. Now, you may be saying a little less. Have you seen how many giveaways it was? It was literally, and yes, I do see how many giveaways it was. Before you finish that sentence, I do see how many giveaways it was. Because it was 14 for the Penguins and 17 for the Jackets. But if you do this mathematically, 17 for the Jackets and 15 for the Blue Jackets, it doesn't seem as damaging as you might think. It looks like the Jackets were only 3 giveaways above the Pittsburgh Penguins. Pittsburgh gives up the puck 3 more times. We're tied at 17-17, meaning both teams gave away the puck 17 times. However, in a game that takes 20 minutes to complete and an official 60 minutes to make up the time with the regulation period and the second period of action to play, there's only so much you can do with that. I said we were gonna take care of face-offs later, and now it's later, so let's talk about the face-offs, okay? So, out of the draws, which I don't have the draw sheet here, and understandably so, but I will understand the draws probably for the Sharks. So the Penguins face off out of however many draws they won. Their face off percentage from this game was 47.5%. So they were basically 47.5% good on the face off circle. However, if you're talking about really, really good, the face off circle for the Blue Jackets, despite how many draws they won, was a total of 52.5%. We do not appear to have time for a game puck of the game, but that is okay. Because you know what? Now that we're done with the game stats, let's get a look at our stars of the game. And it doesn't look like there's any surprise to us here. Now, usually we would have an introduction for this, but not this season. So we're getting into the 3 stars. And it doesn't look like it's any surprise to me. This kind of looks like how I would have done the 3 stars if I was actually the one to make the final call. This is kind of how I think I would put it. And I know that I said we're going to try to be as unbiased as humanly possible. But when you really look at it, when you really look at it, everyone, when you really look at it, Monahan, DV, and Werwinski, I mean, those are those are good guys, and they truly proved that they needed to be a part of the 3 stars of the game. If you really look at it, they truly proved that they deserve to be a part of the 3 stars. So Monahan, DV, and Werwinski or Zach. Let's just say Zach. Let's say Zach. Zach, DV, and Monahan, they had quite quite the show. They made 2 points for Sean Monahan, and we had 2 points for him. We also got a goal from DV and an assist, 2 points for him. We got a goal and an assist for Zach, a goal and an assist, which leads to 2 points. So all three of those guys got 3 points. Excuse me, got 2 points. But you know what? That's fine. That's fine. That's how they want to do it. Great. All right. So the stars of the game are over. What's left to do on Penguins post game? Well, time for the play of the game. And play of the game for me is coming up with what I believe was actually one of the best plays in that hockey game. Now, you might say, what play was good? What play was bad? Like, where are you going with this, Thomas? I am going with this by saying that I think the goal that should have been Sidney Crosby's was actually a good idea to give Anthony Bubarelli his goal, and I'll actually say Anthony B, because if you look here, and this is just the generation of the game uh visual, I should say, from the edge, I believe. And if you look at it very, very carefully, if you look at it very carefully, we've got on the ice 82, 87, and 72. Crosby's got the puck. He's got it to 72. And then you've got a pass. And how does Crosby get it? Well, he comes into the center of the ice and gets the puck into the back of the net. But it kind of feels like it was kicked in. Kind of feels like it was kicked in. Anyways, that is my play of the game. Let me know what your plays of the game are, and you could do so by doing what Scott has mentioned in previous post-game shows, going on Discord with the Penguins post-game. Link will be provided in both shows' descriptions to the Discord page, and I'll let Scott talk to you about that before we continue on. So, Scott, I'm going to bring you in to get the floor so you can provide how people can get in touch for Penguins hockey with that.
If you would like to get in touch with us and you have a take on the 3 stars of the game, you can do so by going over to our Discord server on Discord under Penguins Postgame Interactions. That's Penguins Postgame Show Interactions. Also, you can do this for the 3 stars, the play of the game, the game puck of the game, should we have time to do so, and of course, the shake of the game. You can also send us an email at sports for beginners podcast 8231 at gmail.com. Once again, sports for beginners podcast 8231 at gmail.com. Now, back to the program, and let's keep it going.
All right, Scott, thank you very much. So, yes, if you want to be a part of that, follow the information provided by Scott. And if you could not hear what he was saying because he was fast, then you may want to slow down this portion of the show so that you don't get to me right away and you could hear exactly what he's saying if you need to jot down what we were saying. So, we now have reached the point of the program. It's actually my favorite point of the program where we talk about the players of the game, which is usually known as the shake of the game. Now, usually we wouldn't do this until after another break. But because we have time, we're going to talk about the shakes of the game, or rather, player of the game, and make sure that we also try and include some of the action that did go down while this game was happening. Now, of course, this might have been the only game happening, but there were some other hockey action that took place as well. Of course, the website, as you see on our screen, for those of you viewing on YouTube and viewing on Spotify using the video version, this was also known as the NHL.com, but we're, of course, covering the one game, and that's the Blue Jackets and the Penguins. We're going to start with the Pittsburgh Penguins player of the game. And for me, although it's a shake of the game, I mean, you could say whatever you want about Tristan Jarry this season, but he gave up 5 goals. And of course, he didn't give up that 6th goal. But if he did, I would have pulled him after 4 goals. I would have pulled him after 4 goals. I would have pulled him. I would have. Maybe there was a reason why you brought him in. And perhaps that's because he got like 33 assists. Well, not 33 assists, but 33 saves made out of the 38 shots he faced. Remember, the 39th shot was an empty net goal. So that does not count as a shot faced for Tristan Jarry. While he did give up a power play goal and 4 even strength goals, he finished the night with the save percentage of 868% and was only on the ice for about 58 minutes and 38 seconds. So it's almost not entirely his fault. You could say it's his fault, you could say whatever you want to say, but the reality is the goaltenders sometimes don't have all the power. You also have to rely on the skaters, the forwards, the defense, man. Sometimes they're going to score, sometimes they won't. But the goalie can't do it all. And that's where I come into my shake of the game pickups. Now, Tristan Jarry was one of the pickups, but he was also my shake of the game. I actually liked his performance. While it wasn't good, it certainly wasn't bad. It was definitely decent, but it wasn't as bad as the ones I've been hearing about recently from his previous games before he was sent down to the AHL team for Pittsburgh in Scranton. So, okay, what does that mean? Well, what it means is I thought this was a way better performance by him. It sure was not excellent, but I think it was a decent performance. And another guy that I thought actually had a really, really good performance, despite the L, was Anthony. Anthony, if this was really, really close and it was Penguins 3, Blue Jackets 6, I would not have been surprised if Anthony or Crosby was on the 3 stars. I would not have been surprised. However, the reason Anthony is the guy I'm talking about is because you look at his performance. Look at this. A goal in the game, an assist in the game, you get 2 points, which is a total of a +1 minus plus minus, a +1 plus minus. He gets an extra point. Let's just say he gets an extra point. Okay? Let's just say he gets an extra point. And he only had 22 shifts on the ice. So it's almost as so you might be saying, so are you saying he was like on the ice more often? Because we don't think so. No, I'm not saying that. No, no. But what I am saying is that it feels like Anthony had a better night than most of the players combined. However, you also have to look at guys who might not have done so well on the goals or the assists, but could have been doing better everywhere else. And one of those guys I'm looking at is Ricard Raquel with 3 blocked shots, 1 shot taken, and then of course he was -1, and I do believe he avoided the penalty box. Evgeni Malkin, of course, had 2 minutes in the box. And the reason I go to Ricard Raquel is because although he had 20 minutes and 26 seconds of ice time and just about the same amount of time as Anthony did in terms of shifts, I could have been wrong. Maybe that was just 20. And for Ricard, it was 22. He seemed to have a little bit of a bang up game. A bang-up game, when I'm talking about the bang-up game, I'm talking about, like, a game where sometimes you thought you knew where the puck was, and sometimes you thought you didn't know where the puck was. But I digress, okay? I digress, okay? It's in the end, it's a game. It is a game. And you win and you lose sometimes. In this case, it was the Pittsburgh Penguins coming off the loss into facing San Jose. And for the Blue Jackets, they're coming in to face the I believe it's the Montreal Canadiens. I will double check. But when I will double check when we get there. But yes, it was something that we are looking at when they're coming into their next matchups, which of course are tonight. They wrap up both teams wrap up a back-to-back tonight. But we'll get into those games in just a few minutes time. Again, when I talk about check of the games, I think of guys who were pretty good. And I gotta say, I have to say, if this was all Blue Jackets and there was no chance of Penguins coming back, like if it was literally 6-1, I would have said, damn, the goaltender in Elvis, Merce Winkins, or Elvis M, I would have said, you put on a dominant show, Elvis, making 21 saves out of 23 shots faced. Yes, he allowed a power play goal, but he also allowed an even strength goal, which tallies to just 2 goals. And he finished the night with a save percentage of 913%. Now, he was on ice for a little while longer than we saw Tristan Jarry, but the difference here is he was on ice for 59 minutes and 45 seconds. When you go to Tristan Jarry, if we go back to Pittsburgh, when you go back to him, you've got Tristan Jarry with 58 minutes and 38 seconds time on the ice. All right. It does appear that we are running low on time. So you know what? Let's take a 30-second timeout and come out to wrap up the thing. Since we've done our shake of the game, we've done our stars of the game, we've broken down the game from the period by period summary to the game stats. Let's keep it down to what's next for both teams. And while we do that, here's just a look before we get into the 30-second timeout. Here's just a look at the action that went down when the Penguins and the Blue Jackets were going on. And it starts with, now I'm not going to show you what the scores were due to time constraints, but I'm going to talk about them. And the Red Wings ended up falling to the Anaheim Ducks 6-4. The Utah Hockey Club fell to the Golden Knights 4-2. You get the Flames shutting out the Predators in Calgary 2-0. And at the very top of the list with the Pittsburgh Penguins, you got the Avalanche losing to the Capitals with Alexander Ovechkin not even getting a chance to score a goal. Oh well. Alex Ovechkin. Let's see what the next game pulls out for you. And there is some action going on today, Saturday. So let's just give you a game update before we get into our 30-second timeout. And that will be a lot of fun. We've got some games going on. And some games have just gone final. One in particular, and that's the Boston Bruins against the St. Louis Blues, 3-2. The Blues beat the Boston Bruins. Still to come tonight, we got the matchups between the New York Islanders against the Seattle Kraken. We got the Oilers against the Maple Leafs. And we got some Montreal Canadiens action against the Blue Jackets. That's the game of which we're going to get you set up for. We're going to get you set up for the Sabres and the Flyers as well, as they're in action at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Get you ready for the Devils and Lightning. We got the Jets at the Panthers. And we got the Senators at the Hurricanes, alongside the Stars and the Wild. The Kings and the Red Wings tip off at 8, just like the Stars and the Wild. And the Blackhawks and the Canucks end off the night at 10 p.m. And of course, you've got our match that we'll be recapping in the Penguins and the Sharks, but more on that after this 30-second timeout. Take a 30-second timeout and come back to wrap up Penguins postgame between the Jackets and the Penguins after this.
Take another look with Gerda Felix and Melanie Taddeo Malo, two powerful women of diverse backgrounds having genuine, unique, and uncomfortable conversations that everyone needs to have. Join Melanie and Gerda for conversations about what is missing from human connections.
All right, everybody, welcome back into Penguins postgame. Of course, I am your host, Thomas McGregor. Penguins Nation, Blue Jackets Nation. It is time to get ready for the Jackets and the Penguins' next games. Of course, Penguins Nation, or rather Pens Nation, as they're called in Pittsburgh. I would like to let you know that I will be with you following the Penguins final between the Sharks and the Penguins. You may get it on Sunday. You may get it tonight against the Jackets and the Sharks. I should say the Sharks against the Penguins. But with that being in mind, let's take a look. And I'm going to actually use my phone for this. So I'm going to look at the action for us as to where the Penguins and the Blue Jackets. We're gonna start with the Jackets first, and that's gonna be, of course, we've got the Jackets facing off against the Canadiens tonight. But their next couple of matchups look like this. After they take on the Canadiens, we are taking care of business in, and due to time constraints, we're only going to cover at least 3 matches. And those 3 matches for the Jackets will be the Bruins, which is a Monday night game against Boston. They'll come home to face the Tampa Bay Lightning at 7 on Thursday. They'll have a match against the Hurricanes at 7 p.m. as well. And then they'll be back at it again against Montreal Wednesday night, the next Wednesday, after the Saturday against Carolina, which is next Saturday, I believe, which would be November 23rd. All right, Pittsburgh Penguins fans, here's what's coming up after we're done with the Sharks. And if we have more time on the Sharks show, we'll talk about where the rest of their month's games are going. But we're going to cover 3 games and 3 games only, because we got to wrap it up on Penguins postgame. We got to wrap it up. So, for the Penguins, of course, you've got tonight against the Sharks. So only 3 games left. Only 3 games left to talk about. Those games include when you'll next hear our voice of Scott McGregor, the host of Penguins postgame, and that will be when the Tampa Bay Lightning come to face the Pittsburgh Penguins in PPG Paints Arena. And then we've got the Winnipeg Jets and the Utah Hockey Club in a back-to-back. Scott and I will be splitting that. I will have you for the Utah Hockey Club matchup. Scott will have you for the Winnipeg Jets matchup. And then I'm going to take a double-nighter, take on the Vancouver Canucks, which will be at 7:30 on Wednesday. So we'll see you then for that one. And when I say a double-nighter, I mean you'll also have a pre-show for that one as well. Speaking of pre-shows, we're at the end of our show. We don't have time for the attendance record. We don't have time for the officials or the scratches or anything like that. So I am just going to say this. And the attendance record, just a little bit of a interest rate might happen on after we close out the show. You might hear it from our host, Scott McGregor. He might have a little short clip to bring to us for that. That is what I'm thinking will happen. But I'll let you figure it out as we wrap up the show. The next Penguins pre-show after the Vancouver Canucks, and I pull a nighter with the Pittsburgh Penguins from the pre-show to the post-game show. I hope you join us for that. It will be ahead of the Leafs and the Penguins' next meeting, but you will be hearing it ahead of the Rangers and the Penguins is meeting at Madison Square Garden. Is that the final meeting against the Penguins and the Madison Square Garden Rangers of New York? I don't know. All I do know is that we are running low on time right now, and that is it for this one. Thank you very much for listening/watching. If this, of course, is on YouTube, you know the drill. Click like if you like what you're listening to. Click subscribe if you really like it. Tell all your friends. Pittsburgh Penguins lose to the Columbus Blue Jackets 6-2. What will be the final against the San Jose Sharks? What will be the final against the Montreal Canadiens for the Blue Jackets? Those games will be next time on Penguins Post Game, as we'll look at those games if we have time to look at the Blue Jackets and Montreal Canadiens game. But for now, I am Thomas Rugger saying thank you as always for tuning in to Penguins Hockey. And
ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has just left the building. You've just listened to Pittsburgh Penguins Hockey on the Sports for Beginners podcast. To learn more about the show and to view the upcoming schedule, like the Sports for Beginners Facebook page. Search Sports for Beginners or visit the official Sports for Beginners podcast website. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay tuned. And remember that it is not goodbye, it is until next time. And you'd have to be here to believe it. Thank you so much for checking in to Penguins postgame this season, Penguins fans. Your host of the Sports for Beginners podcast, Scott McGregor, here. I just wanted to let you guys know that it brings me great joy to bring you a show like the one we brought you last year, and it brings me even more joy with everything that has come out of it as well. As we try to navigate through quite a year with milestone after milestone in the month of October and the month of September. As mentioned again, my name is Scott McGregor, but if you have any questions, any concerns, any content you want aired on the program, please send me an email at sportsforbeginnerspodcast 8231 at gmail.com. Once again, that's Sports for Beginners Podcast 8231 at gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast and for listening to this episode of Penguins postgame. We will see you next time right here on Sports for Beginners. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.